She said it with a laugh, on camera, for the whole world to see. My daughter-in-law sat on her pristine couch, sipping coffee, telling her followers, "That old woman just sits on her A all day." The video went viral overnight. I watched it in silence, the light of her ring lamp reflecting off my tears. But that was the moment I decided. It was time for me to stop being silent. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Before all this, I wasn't that old woman. I was Jean Marie Collins, a retired schoolteacher, mother of one son, and a woman who believed that kindness could fix anything. For 30 years, I taught children how to read, write, and believe in themselves. I thought that would prepare me for motherhood, for raising David to be strong, respectful, and compassionate. When his father left us, I carried everything alone. Every bill, every late-night worry, every scraped knee, it was all on me. But I never complained. I told myself that love, when pure, doesn't keep score. When David met Melissa, I was genuinely happy. She was beautiful and confident, the kind of woman who filled every room she entered. She called me Mom the first week she met me, and I felt warmth in my chest. I thought, finally, my son has found someone who sees the good in him, who will stand by him the way I always have. I remember their wedding like it was yesterday. Melissa looked radiant in white, her hand gripping David's as they promised forever. I cried, not from sadness, but from pride. I thought our little family had grown. I thought I was gaining a daughter, not losing a son. In the beginning, she was sweet. She brought me flowers on Mother's Day, baked me cupcakes for my birthday, and always insisted I sit at the head of the table. She made me feel included, wanted, loved. I used to brag about her to my friends, how lucky I was that my daughter-in-law treated me like her own mother. But people can surprise you. Sometimes the sweetest voices hide the sharpest edges. As the months passed, her kindness began to feel rehearsed. The smiles lasted just a little too long, and the compliments always carried something underneath. When she'd say, "Oh, Jean, you're so thoughtful, always bringing those old-fashioned casseroles," I'd notice her smirk when her friends laughed. I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, families take time to blend. But the changes came slowly. So slowly I didn't notice the shift until I was already standing outside their circle. It started with harmless remarks. One evening, after dinner, she waved me off as I began clearing plates. "Oh, Jean, don't bother with the dishes. Just sit down. You've done enough for your lifetime." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, though my heart felt heavy. The words were kind, but the tone wasn't. It felt like she was saying, "You've done your part. Now stay out of the way." I told myself not to be sensitive. But then it happened again. And again. Each time, her jokes cut a little deeper, and each time, David said nothing. He'd just smile awkwardly, pretending not to notice. That silence spoke louder than her words ever could. Before long, the invitations stopped coming. Sunday dinners became couple nights. Family group chats that once buzzed with photos and updates suddenly went quiet for me. I'd see pictures on Facebook, Melissa, my son, and her family smiling at restaurants, celebrating birthdays I never knew about. The first time I saw it, I stared at the screen for hours. It wasn't the party that hurt. It was realizing they didn't even think to tell me. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe they were busy. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe this was just the new way families worked. But one morning, when I went to drop off a pie for David, I found a note taped to their front door. It read, "Please call before coming. We might be filming." Filming? I didn't understand. That evening, I searched online and found her channel, Melissa's Modern Family. Thousands of followers, daily vlogs, product sponsorships, and a perfectly curated version of their lives. there she was, smiling, holding David's hand, calling him my rock. But there was no sign of me, not even in the background. It was as if I didn't exist. At first, I felt silly for caring. But then I watched one of her videos. She was giving advice on setting boundaries with in-laws. Sometimes, she said, twirling a strand of her hair, older family members can be a bit overbearing. You love them, but you have to protect your peace. She laughed, and her followers filled the comments with heart emojis and praise. My chest tightened. I didn't need to guess who she was talking about. I could feel it. Every word was aimed at me. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, scrolling through her videos. Each one had small references. Some people don't know when to let go. Retired doesn't mean entitled. I'm teaching my husband to prioritize his new family. I felt my stomach twist. I wasn't angry, not yet, just deeply, quietly hurt. I had spent my life teaching kindness, giving love, and expecting the same in return. Now I was being turned into a punchline for her followers' entertainment. Still, I stayed silent. I thought David would notice, would step in, would remind her who helped him through college, who lent him the down payment for their house, who never once asked for anything in return. But he didn't. Maybe he didn't want conflict. Maybe he didn't see it the way I did. Or maybe he enjoyed the peace that came from staying quiet, even if it meant letting his mother take the hits. One afternoon, I decided to visit without warning. I brought a casserole, my old habit. When I knocked, I heard Melissa's voice through the door. "Just ignore it," she said. "She'll leave." My heart stopped. I waited, hoping I misheard. Then David opened the door, his smile tight. "Hey, Mom. You should have called first. We're kind of busy." That was the first time I truly felt like a stranger in my son's home, the same home I helped them buy. I walked back to my car, pie still warm in my hands, tears blurring my vision. I didn't even notice the neighbor waving as I drove away. For weeks, I tried to convince myself things would get better. Families argue, daughters-in-law and mothers clash. It's normal. But something inside me knew this was different. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a slow erasure. Every comment, every cold smile, every skipped invitation was another line crossed out from the story of my own family. And then it happened, the day she went viral. It was a Wednesday morning. My friend Carol called, her voice trembling. "Jean, have you seen it? You need to sit down." I opened my phone, and there it was, a clip of Melissa sitting on that same couch where I used to have tea with her. The caption read, "Dealing with Toxic In-Laws 101. She laughed, looking straight into the camera. That old woman just sits on her A all day, pretending she's still the queen of the family. Some people just don't know when their time is up. The comments were brutal. People cheered her on, mocking me without knowing who I was. "Cut her off," one wrote. "You owe her nothing," another said. My chest tightened as I watched thousands of strangers laugh at me. The woman who raised the man she called her husband. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat there, phone in hand, feeling the weight of 30 years of sacrifice pressing down on me. The woman on that screen wasn't just cruel. She was proud of it. She wanted the world to know she had won. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. I realized I had spent years trying to belong where I was no longer welcome. I had built walls for others to live behind while I stood outside, waiting for gratitude that would never come. I wasn't angry. I was awake. I didn't realize I'd become an outsider in my own son's family until the day she went viral. When I saw the video, I didn't even realize what I was looking at first. It popped up in one of those endless social media scrolls, the kind of thing you stumble across when you can't sleep. The thumbnail caught my eye. It was Melissa, sitting in her spotless living room, her hair perfectly styled, her smile polished, the kind of smile that hid knives behind it. The title read, "How I Learned to Set Boundaries with Toxic Relatives." My heart tightened, but curiosity made me click. The video began with soft music, candles lit in the background, and Melissa talking in her soothing influencer voice about mental peace and letting go of people who drain your energy. Then she said it, that line I'll never forget. "Sometimes you just gotta set boundaries with old people who think your house is theirs." Her eyes flicked to the side, as if daring someone to challenge her. My picture frame, the one I'd gifted them for their wedding, the one with their initials engraved, sat behind her on the shelf. I knew she meant me. She went on, painting herself as a victim of an overbearing mother-in-law. She laughed while describing an older relative who showed up uninvited, rearranged things, and acted like she ran the place. Her audience adored it. Thousands of views poured in within hours. The comments flooded with words like, "Good for you, girl," and "Older generation can be so entitled." And there, in the background, half out of frame but unmistakable, sat my son, David. He was smiling, laughing even, as if all of this were just harmless fun. Something in me cracked that night, quietly, deeply, like the sound of glass splintering under pressure. What hurt most wasn't Melissa's words, it was David's silence. He didn't defend me. He didn't blink. He didn't seem to see me at all. The boy I'd raised alone, the one I worked double shifts for, the one whose dreams I carried like fragile glass in my hands, now watched me be humiliated to entertain strangers. And in that instant, something inside me went cold. I realized I was invisible to them, not a mother, not a person, just a character in their online show. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, the glow from my phone lighting the room. I replayed that video again and again, every frame cutting deeper than the last. I wasn't angry at first, just numb. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments, each one a stranger's judgment on a life they didn't know. "She sounds toxic. Good riddance to controlling elders. Keep shining, Melissa." The irony was unbearable. They were cheering for a woman who wouldn't have that shiny home, that fancy furniture, that very camera setup. Without me, because when David and Melissa got married, they didn't have much. I'd sold my late mother's jewelry to help with their down payment. When David lost his job for a few months, I covered their bills so they wouldn't fall behind. When Melissa wanted to start her content creator journey, I bought her first camera, told her she could use her voice to inspire others. Never did I think that voice would be used to humiliate me, but I didn't fight back. Not online. Not with words. I decided that if Melissa wanted an audience, I'd give her a story worth watching, but one she wouldn't control. Silence, I told myself, would be my weapon. Quietly, I began collecting. Every document, every bank transfer, every proof of what I'd done for them. I opened a folder on my laptop and named it Truth. The first thing I saved was the wire receipt for $45,000, the exact amount I gave them for their home's down payment. Then came screenshots of every monthly transfer. The $500 here, $1,000 there, labeled just helping out. Next, the tuition payment for David's MBA, paid entirely by me after his father left. My heart sank as I realized how much I'd sacrificed without a word. Every photo, every proof felt like a small wound reopening. But I kept going. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because I needed to remember, needed to remind myself that I hadn't been the villain in their story. A few days later, I went to visit them. Melissa greeted me with that rehearsed smile, camera in hand. "Oh, hi, Jean," she said sweetly as though nothing had happened. I could see the faint red light blinking on her phone, recording. I gave her a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just came to drop off some things," I said. She tilted her head, curious, suspicious even. David came out from the kitchen, avoiding my gaze. He looked older somehow, weighed down but not enough to stop playing along. "Mom, we were going to call you," he said, as if that erased the weeks of silence. Inside their home, everything was immaculate, every corner curated for the camera. I noticed that the family portraits no longer included me. My picture, once placed beside theirs on the mantel, was gone, replaced by a decorative vase. The symbolic cruelty of it stung more than I wanted to admit. As I left, Melissa's voice followed me, bright and performative. "Drive safe, Jean. Don't overdo it, okay?" Her followers would probably love that line. Caring, patient daughter-in-law worried about her difficult elder. But I heard the edge underneath it. The mockery. That evening I sat at my kitchen table, the folder open before me. The numbers stared back like witnesses. It wasn't about the money. It was about memory, about proof that I mattered once. I began drafting a letter, not to them, but to myself. I needed to put the truth somewhere it couldn't be edited or rephrased for views. I wrote about the years after my husband left, how David and I survived on small meals and big dreams. How I used to pack his lunch with little notes inside. "You're brave. You can do this. I love you." I remembered the first time Melissa came over, her laughter filling my house, her compliments making me feel like family might finally be whole again. And I wrote about the gradual shift, the clipped tones, the fake smiles, the way she always seemed to make kindness sound like pity. I was still writing when my phone buzzed. A notification. Melissa had uploaded another video. "When people play the victim." My breath caught. I clicked it before I could think. There she was again, this time sitting beside David. "Sometimes," she said softly, "you try to be good to someone, but they twist everything. They guilt you. They make you feel like you owe them." My chest tightened. Every word felt like a dagger aimed at me. David nodded beside her, agreeing. That was the moment I stopped crying. Something sharper took its place. If they wanted to play the game of perception, they'd learn that truth doesn't need filters or edits. It stands on its own, quiet, steady, unshakable. I wouldn't stoop to their level, but I also wouldn't stay in the shadows anymore. I printed every document, every letter, every receipt. I organized them in a neat binder labeled records. Then I called a lawyer, not for revenge, but for clarity. I wanted to make sure that when my time came, my assets, my savings, my home, everything I'd worked for, would go exactly where it was deserved. That night, as I sealed the binder and placed it in my safe, I looked at my reflection and whispered, if she wanted followers, I'd give her the story of her life, the truth she buried under her filters. The seed of something powerful had been planted, not spite, but purpose. They thought they were scripting their story about me. They had no idea I was quietly writing the real one. It was David's birthday dinner, one of those picture-perfect evenings that looked good on camera but felt hollow in person. Melissa had decorated the restaurant with golden balloons spelling out, "Happy birthday, babe," and placed her tripod right in the center of the room. She was live on her channel again, streaming everything. The clinking glasses, the laughter, the smiles that didn't quite reach anyone's eyes. I was invited, of course, but not out of love. I was just another prop in her perfect life, the sweet but clueless mother-in-law who'd sit quietly in the corner, smiling for the camera while they pretended to be the perfect couple. As I took my seat at the edge of the long table, I could already feel the eyes of her followers watching through that little red light blinking on her phone. I could almost hear their comments. "Oh, look how cute, they brought his mom. She looks grumpy. That's the toxic one she talked about." It was all for content, my son's birthday, my presence, even my silence. Melissa thrived on that illusion. The waiter brought out the cake. 3 tiers, blue frosting, David's name in gold. The room filled with claps, cheers, and camera flashes. Melissa, always in control, raised her glass high. "To my husband," she said with a rehearsed smile, "for always supporting me when others just sit around." Her followers laughed in the chat, hearts and laughing emojis flooding the screen. Even a few people at the table chuckled politely. My chest tightened, but my face didn't flinch. I'd heard that tone before. The poison hidden in sweetness, the sting behind a smile. I looked at David. He didn't stop her. He didn't even look at me. He just smiled, that same polite, empty smile he'd learned from her. Something inside me settled in that moment. Not rage, not pain, but clarity. I stood, slowly, deliberately. The laughter faded, the clinking of glasses stopped, and every pair of eyes turned to me. "Melissa," I said softly, my voice steady. "Since you like sharing your life online, why not share this too?" Her eyebrows lifted, pretending confusion, but her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her phone to keep the camera focused. She was performing, but she didn't know what was coming. I reached into my handbag, the one I'd carried for years, and pulled out a small cream envelope. I walked to the center of the table, every step echoing through the sudden silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the live stream. I placed the envelope right in front of her. She stared at it, then at me, still smiling that fake smile. "What's this?" she asked, voice sugar-coated. "Your favorite kind of surprise," I replied. "One that tells the truth." She hesitated, then tore it open. Out fell the property deed, her home, signed back over to my name. Along with it, the receipts of every bank transfer, every payment, every cent I'd sent them. On top, a single handwritten note. "Everything you own was once mine." "But not anymore," gasps filled the room. David's fork clattered against his plate. Melissa blinked, her lips parting as if words would save her. But I wasn't done. I turned toward the camera, toward that glowing red light that had been used to mock me, to make me small. My heart pounded, but my voice came out calm, almost too calm. "To everyone watching," I said clearly, "don't confuse silence with weakness. Some of us are just patient enough to let truth go viral on its own." The room froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, chaos. The livestream chat exploded. "Wait, what's going on? Did she just say deed? Is that her mother-in-law's house?" Melissa's followers started turning. Some began defending her, but most demanded answers. Screenshots were flying, clips were being saved, and within minutes, what was meant to be her shining moment turned into her downfall. Live, in front of thousands. Melissa's face drained of color. She fumbled for her phone, trying to end the stream, but her hand was shaking too much. David's jaw locked, the muscles in his face tight. "Mom, what are you doing?" he whispered, but it was too late. The damage was done, or maybe the truth had finally been set free. I looked at him, my son, the boy I'd once carried through sleepless nights, the man who'd once promised he'd never let anyone hurt me. He looked like a stranger now, cornered between pride and guilt. I didn't feel hate, just a deep, quiet sadness. "I'm doing what you should have done long ago," I said. "Standing up for the person who gave you everything." Melissa tried to recover, flashing her camera smile again. "Guys, ignore her, she's just upset." But the chat wasn't buying it anymore. Comments flew faster than she could delete them. "This isn't okay. Wait, did she really buy your house? Why didn't you ever say that? You made her sound horrible." The audience she'd built by twisting the truth was now tearing her apart with it. The restaurant manager came over, awkwardly asking if everything was all right. It wasn't. Nothing about this was all right. But for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not revenge, not satisfaction. Peace. Because I had finally spoken. I had finally stopped letting them use my silence as their power. David stood up suddenly. "Mom, please, not here. We can talk at home." His voice cracked just slightly, the boy inside him slipping through the man's mask. I met his eyes. "Home," I said softly. "You mean the house you live in because I gave it to you?" His face fell. He had no words. Melissa's friends sitting nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. One whispered, "Is this real?" Another muttered, "Oh my God, this is all online." Then came the sound, that dreaded ping. Notification after notification as the clip began spreading. People were recording, reposting, reacting. Within an hour, the video had been clipped, shared, and stitched across every platform. Only this time, it wasn't her carefully curated image. It was her silence, her shock, her truth. I walked out quietly, leaving them both standing there, surrounded by the whispers of their guests and the blinking light of the camera that had once been their greatest weapon. As I stepped outside, the cool night air felt different, lighter. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. By morning, the clip was everywhere. Headlines started appearing. Influencer exposed by mother-in-law during live stream. Birthday dinner turns into truth bomb. The comments sections were filled with people dissecting every detail. The receipts, the note, the expressions on their faces. People who had once cheered for Melissa were now demanding accountability. So she mocked the woman who paid for everything? This is disgusting. I can't believe her husband let that happen. Their brand, built on polished smiles and moral lessons, began crumbling in real time. Sponsorships quietly disappeared. Collaborations pulled out. The same followers who once adored them now turned the camera around. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't respond. I simply watched the truth do what it always does, rise to the surface, unfiltered and undeniable. By the end of the week, the clip had been featured on morning talk shows. News channels dissected it, calling it the viral family feud that exposed influencer culture. Reporters tried to reach me for comment, but I said nothing. I had spoken once, and that was enough. Melissa released a teary apology video days later, claiming she was misunderstood, that family tension had been exaggerated. But even her tears looked staged. The public wasn't buying it. Her subscriber count dropped overnight. David went silent, no posts, no appearances. For the first time, their camera wasn't rolling. And me? I went back to my quiet life. My garden, my tea, my peace. The same people who once called me that old woman were now calling me the woman who stood her ground. And that was before the news channels picked it up, before the world learned that silence, when chosen carefully, can be louder than any scream. Within days, the world they had built online began to collapse like a house of cards. The brand deals that once filled their inbox went silent. One by one, sponsorships vanished without explanation. Companies pulled their names from Melissa's videos, old collaborations were deleted, and even the cheerful family vlog playlist disappeared from her channel. Comments that were once filled with hearts and compliments turned vicious. You used her? This is disgusting. Shame on both of you. Thousands of strangers who had once idolized her were now dissecting every frame of that birthday dinner. Screenshots of my note. Everything you own was once mine. But not anymore. Were circulating everywhere, printed on memes and quote posts. For years, I had been invisible. Now my silence had become the loudest voice online. Melissa tried to fight back. She posted a long, tearful video, mascara smudged, her voice shaking. People don't understand, she said. There's so much more to this story. She claimed she had been misunderstood, that she had only made a joke, that the internet had blown it out of proportion. But her tears looked rehearsed, and her tone carried the same entitlement that once lived in her laughter. The audience didn't buy it. The comments were merciless. Now she cries because she lost her income. Where was this empathy when you mocked her? You built your fame on lies, now deal with the truth. Then came the silence. Her followers began to leave. Her subscriber count dropped by the hour. Brands stopped returning her calls. She disappeared from her channel for days, then weeks. I didn't check often, but sometimes curiosity won. I saw how her once busy comment sections now stood empty, her bright thumbnails replaced with dark apologies. Her empire of filters was fading. A few days later, David came to see me. I was watering my plants when he showed up at my door, looking smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched, eyes red. He stood there for a long moment before saying anything. "Mom," he said quietly, "you ruined our lives." I looked at him, and for a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to bring me crayon drawings and promise he'd take care of me someday. But that boy was gone. "No, son," I said softly. "You ruined mine first." He flinched. "It was just a joke, Mom. You know how the internet is." His voice trembled as he spoke, trying to find a way out of the guilt that wrapped around him. She didn't mean it. It was just content. Everyone does that now. I put down the watering can and turned toward him. David, do you know what content is? I asked. It's when people take their truth and shape it into something worth sharing. What Melissa did wasn't content. It was cruelty dressed as entertainment. He opened his mouth but couldn't respond. I could see the shame fighting through his pride. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply walked to my desk, pulled out a folder, and handed him the documents. I've closed the joint accounts, I said. And I've stopped paying the mortgage. His face went pale. Mom, you can't do that. We'll lose the house, I sighed. David, that house was mine before it was yours. I put it in your name because I trusted you. You turned that trust into leverage for her lifestyle. You let her mock me while living under my roof, and now I'm simply taking back what was never truly yours. He stepped closer, desperate now. We can fix this, Mom. Please. I'll make her apologize publicly. We'll do another video, explain everything. I shook my head. No, David. The internet doesn't need another performance. What you need, is to learn what silence feels like. He didn't reply. He just stood there, eyes glassy as the reality sank in. For the first time in years, my son didn't have anything to say. A week later, the eviction notice was delivered. It was public record, and of course Melissa used it for another emotional video. She sat in an empty living room, boxes piled behind her, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe my own mother-in-law would do this to us, she sobbed into the camera. We have nowhere to go. We're starting over from nothing. But this time the internet wasn't kind. You mean the house she bought? One comment said. Now you know how it feels to lose what you didn't earn, another wrote. Her own audience turned her story into a lesson she never intended to teach. I didn't gloat. I didn't clap back. I didn't post any response. Instead, I made tea, sat by my window, and watched the sunlight fall over my garden. When a reporter called for a statement, I simply said, maybe now she'll understand what sitting all day really feels like when you have nowhere left to stand. That line spread like wildfire. Within hours, it became the most shared quote of the week. People posted it with captions like, "Karma served cold," and "The quiet ones always win." I didn't mean it to go viral, but maybe people were hungry for justice that looked human, not vengeful. Melissa's downfall became a social case study. Talk shows debated it. Psychologists discussed digital disrespect. Influencers warned their followers about crossing moral lines for engagement. My story, our story, had become a mirror for millions who had been mocked, silenced, or taken for granted. But while the world watched her unravel, I was healing. Not in a dramatic way, just slowly, quietly. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since David was a child. I spent mornings reading in my garden, evenings cooking for myself. The peace I found wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. One morning, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Melissa. No cameras this time, no filters, just ink and paper. She wrote, I don't expect forgiveness, but I finally understand what I did. You didn't destroy us. You taught me what respect costs when it's lost. For a moment, I felt the same ache I did the day I first saw that cruel video. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was closure. I didn't write back. Some stories don't need sequels. David called once more weeks later. He said they were renting a small apartment now, trying to rebuild. His voice was softer, humbler. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. I see everything now. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it through the phone. That's all I wanted, David, for you to see. After that, I stopped hearing from them. The internet moved on, as it always does, chasing the next scandal, the next fall from grace. But I stayed still. I had no more battles to fight. My world, my small, quiet world, was finally my own again. Weeks later, as I walked through the park, a young woman stopped me. Excuse me, she said shyly. Are you the woman from that video? I smiled gently. Yes, I suppose I am. She nodded, eyes bright. I just wanted to say, thank you. My mother went through something similar. Watching you gave her courage to stand up for herself. I didn't know what to say. For the first time, my story wasn't just mine anymore. It had become a voice for others who'd been silenced, mocked, or overlooked. And maybe that was the real justice. Not the lost house, not the public humiliation, but the quiet ripple of dignity that spread from one truth told at the right time. That line, maybe now you'll understand what sitting all day really feels like when you have nowhere left to stand, became the heartbeat of every conversation, the anthem for every silent heart that finally spoke up. Months passed, and the noise began to fade like the echo of a storm long gone. The internet found a new scandal to devour, and Melissa's face slowly disappeared from trending tabs and gossip channels. Her once carefully curated life, full of candles, filters, and motivational quotes, was replaced by silence. Their followers drifted away like dust in sunlight, leaving only fragments of what used to be her perfect illusion. David, too, grew quieter. I'd see his name in an occasional article or tagged in a memory post, but his smile was different now. There was guilt in it, exhaustion, and maybe something that looked like understanding. I didn't reach out. I had done my part, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. The house that had once been filled with their laughter, arguments, and performative love was mine again, empty but peaceful. I moved through it slowly, touching walls that had heard my silence and held my strength. Every room carried a story, some bitter, some tender. But all of them were mine to keep now. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. It felt earned. People often say revenge feels good in the moment, but hollow afterward. Maybe that's true for some. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. About letting truth breathe where lies once lived. I hadn't shouted or screamed or fought in their arena of hashtags and comments. I had simply placed reality in front of the world and stepped back. And when truth stands on its own, it doesn't need applause. It just needs time. Weeks turned into months. I began spending more mornings in my garden. The roses that Melissa used to complain about, saying they looked too old-fashioned, had started blooming again. I'd sit near them with my cup of tea, watching sunlight spill across the leaves, and think about how strange life can be. One day you're being mocked for sitting still, and the next, that stillness becomes your peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was simply free. Then one morning, as I sorted through old mail, I noticed a cream-colored envelope tucked beneath a stack of bills. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Neat, careful, the kind that tries too hard to look calm. It was from Melissa. My first instinct was to tear it up, but something inside me whispered to read it. I opened it slowly. Her words were not what I expected. There was no sarcasm, no justification, no excuses, just raw honesty. She wrote that she had lost almost everything: the house, the sponsorships, even friends who had once cheered her on. She said the silence that followed her downfall was louder than any applause she had ever received. I judged you because I was scared of becoming you, she wrote. Aging, losing attention, fading into the background. It terrified me. You became my mirror, and I hated what I saw, not because of you, but because of my own fear. But you taught me what strength really is. You didn't fight me with words. You let time fight for you. And time did. I'm sorry. I sat there, holding the letter for a long while. The ink had smudged slightly, maybe from her tears. My hands trembled, not from anger or pain, but from something deeper. Recognition. I had been her once, young and full of noise, desperate to prove myself, afraid of becoming irrelevant. The world is cruel to women who grow older. It teaches you that once your youth fades, your worth follows. Maybe Melissa had just been a product of that cruelty too. Maybe she wasn't my enemy. Maybe she was just lost. I didn't write back. Not because I didn't forgive her, but because forgiveness isn't always meant to be spoken. Some forgiveness lives quietly, like a seed in the soil, unseen, but growing. I placed her letter in a drawer beside the old family photographs, next to a picture of David as a little boy, smiling with ice cream on his chin. The same boy who once said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house." He did, just not in the way he imagined. That evening, I walked outside as the sun began to set. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, and the air smelled like earth after rain. I sat down on the old wooden bench near my roses, the same place where I used to sit when I felt invisible. But this time, I didn't feel small or forgotten. I felt full, complete. I had walked through humiliation, betrayal, and public scrutiny, and somehow come out softer, not bitter. Stronger, not hardened. My peace was not loud, but it was unshakable. I remembered something my late husband once told me. "Jean," he had said, "the world may not always see your worth, but never let it make you forget it." Back then, I didn't fully understand what he meant, but now, as the world's noise faded and my peace grew louder, I finally did. I smiled, looking at the roses glowing in the twilight. "You were right," I whispered to him. "Peace is the only wealth that never loses value." Days went by, then weeks, and life found a new rhythm. Neighbors would sometimes stop by to check in, bringing pies or just conversation. Some of them had seen the viral clips and whispered that I was so brave. I'd smile politely, but bravery wasn't what it felt like. It felt like survival. Like finally learning that the loudest strength is often the quietest. I began writing again, not for anyone to read, just for myself. I wrote about forgiveness, about aging, about how the internet can destroy people without ever knowing their truth. I wrote about how families fall apart not because of one big betrayal, but because of 1,000 small silences. And in those pages, I began to heal. The kind of healing that doesn't erase the past, but teaches you to hold it gently. One afternoon, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw David standing there. He looked thinner, older, his eyes carrying both regret and exhaustion. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he simply said, "Mom." I nodded, letting him in. We didn't discuss the past. We just sat together at the table, drinking tea in silence. Sometimes love doesn't need words either. He didn't say sorry, and I didn't ask him to. But when he reached out and held my hand, I felt something unspoken pass between us. Not a full reconciliation, but the first step toward one. That was enough for now. Later that night, I went back to the garden. The moonlight shimmered across the petals, and a gentle breeze brushed my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval, apology, or acknowledgement. My story had unfolded in pain, but it ended in peace. And peace, I realized, isn't the absence of noise. It's the decision to stop letting the noise matter. I looked up at the stars and whispered to myself, let them say what they want. Let them believe what they choose. I may sit all day, but now I sit in peace. The words lingered in the night air, soft but powerful. A part of me knew that somewhere, someone watching my story online would misunderstand me again, twist my actions into another tale. But that no longer mattered. The world will always find something to say. What matters is whether you let their words define you or your silence. As I turned back toward the house, I felt something lift. A weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for years. I had lived through the fire of public shame and come out reborn, not burnt. The woman who once sat quietly in the corner of a live stream, mocked as useless, had become a symbol of quiet resilience. Not because she shouted, but because she stood her ground when the world tried to erase her. The kind of revenge that doesn't destroy others but rebuilds yourself. And as the night deepened, I smiled one last time, knowing this truth that would outlive any viral moment or cruel comment. And peace, my dear, is the loudest revenge of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Gene Stories, where every tale reminds us, love deserves respect. Hit the bell so you never miss the next story that'll make you feel, think, and remember who truly matters.